The magnitude of the global economic crash we're currently experiencing is unprecedented.
We've had a very sharp contraction in economic activity caused by the virus.
The IMF expects real gross domestic product, that's the value of goods and services we produce, to shrink by 7.2% this year. Compare that to the drought-related recession in 1982, which caused a 2.2% drop, or the recession we had to have in 1991, which caused a 1% drop. But rewind to 1932, when economists estimate the Great Depression caused a real GDP drop of 10 to 20%.
Stocks collapsed, factories shut down, businesses passed out of existence.
Lasting from 1929 to 1939, it was the greatest economic downturn the industrialised world had ever seen. Could this economic crisis be just as bad? Well, according to economists, what we're experiencing now is better in some ways, but much, much worse in others. First, the good news. After the sharp 7.2% drop, the IMF predicts Australia's GDP will expand by 8.4% in 2021.
The Great Depression was a true economic contraction. There's a very different impetus for this economic contraction, and it gives us a great deal of hope that when the virus is dealt with, the economy will be able to recover.
And back in the 30s, an economic catastrophe was a life or death disaster.
In 1930, 50% fall in incomes was enough to put people on the absolute poverty line where they literally couldn't feed themselves. Now we're a much wealthier society, and what we lose is likely to be much more discretionary consumption. Fewer restaurant meals, fewer trips to the cinema, fewer holidays.
But the severity of the crisis can't be downplayed. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg forecasted shocking unemployment figures for the June quarter.
Unemployment is expected to peak at around 10%.
That's more than 1 million Australians out of work. And it will be the first time the unemployment rate has hit double digits since April 1994. Although compared to the Great Depression, we're much better prepared now for dealing with economic catastrophe.
Back then, they did a lot of things wrong. They raised interest rates and they tried to cut government spending, and all our policies now are the exact opposite of that. Our government is able to learn from the lessons of history and do a much better job at pulling our economy back out of the muck.
So what's the bad news?
Now all of a sudden we had to sit down and have a think about where the grocery money was coming from, where the money for the registration of vehicles were coming from.
The Great Depression took a couple of years to develop, whereas with this virus, it has been rapid. We have lost a huge number of jobs in an incredibly short period of time. So this is much more of a sharp shock. This is not purely economic. We have a health crisis going on as well at the same time. If we can't create a vaccine, then we're not going to be able to get people's confidence to come back, and we're not going to be able to get the economy back to the level that it was previously at.
And even if Australia makes it through the health crisis relatively unscathed, how the economy recovers depends on other countries.
Even if we mop up the virus brilliantly, if the rest of the world doesn't, we're going to be in trouble for a long time, because we rely on them growing really strongly for our own well-being, for our own jobs, for our own incomes.